Welcome to our channel, The Traveling Tukes. If you've been thinking of coming to Canada and wanted some more information on driving here, then join us as we drive to Toronto and discuss borders, tolls, mileage, money, safety, and differences or misconceptions. First thing, if you're crossing in Buffalo, you have the choice between 4 vehicle toll crossings over the Niagara River. There's the Peace Bridge, Lewiston-Queenston Bridge, the Whirlpool Rapids Bridge, and the Rainbow Bridge. Of the 4 bridges, the Peace Bridge and Lewiston-Queenston Bridge carry a greater percentage of vehicles with non-local destinations because of their connections to the major roadways. If you're coming from Michigan, you have the choice of Detroit's Ambassador Bridge or Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, or you can cross in Sarnia. We'll be discussing traveling from the Buffalo route to Toronto, but the majority of information will be the same for either route. The first thing to know before arriving at the border is to fill your gas tank up prior to arriving in Canada. Our fuel is so much more expensive here than in the United States, and it just got worse with an increase in our carbon tax. We are heavily taxed on fuel, and currently fuel is about $1.60 per liter, so if you convert this, it would be about $6.06 per gallon. The next thing to know is what information do you need for crossing the border. Always check the requirements prior to traveling, and we will put a link below to the Canadian border information. This covers everything from documents needed, traveling with minors, items you can bring across, and what you need to declare. Also, you're normally asked the reason for your visit, where you're going, where you are staying, and when you are leaving. Crossing into Canada is pretty simple. You're usually asked the standard questions and may need to show your license and ownership of your vehicle, so having this handy helps. You may have also heard that cannabis is legal in Ontario, which it is, but since the border is federally controlled, you can't bring any in or out to avoid arrest. Also, if this is something you're planning on doing while here, you should also find out if you're allowed to do it on the premises that you're staying at. Also, there may be a lineup at the border, which does happen, especially if you're going on a long weekend, so do be prepared to wait longer at that time, and I'd say it could be an hour or more. We've also included some links that show the wait times at the border so that you can check out before you arrive. After you cross the border, you will have to pay a toll. For example, if you're crossing at the Peace Bridge and have an Easy Pass, you can use that there, and it will be cheaper. But if you are crossing in Michigan, the Easy Pass does not work there, so you will have to pay by alternate methods. So after the tolls, you're on your way, so let's get on to the drive.
So it doesn't matter where you crossed, if you crossed at one of the two at Buffalo, or if you crossed at Queenston, this is the way to go to downtown Toronto, through QEW, going through Burlington, Hamilton. One of the big bridges here is the Skyway Bridge, and you're going to be able to see straight across to Toronto on a clear day, so we'll see what that's like.
So if you look to the left, you're going to see all the steel factories. It's not so pleasant, but on the right-hand side, that's the better view on a clear day. Unfortunately, it's not that clear, so I don't think we're going to see the CN Tower, but you often can see that.
And there's 2 Skyway bridges. One's the Skyway Garden Bridge in St. Catharines. This is the second one in Hamilton, Burlington.
So as we're driving by Hamilton, Ontario, it's worth mentioning that Hamilton has over 100 waterfalls. So if you enjoy hiking in nature, there are some great trails and waterfalls to explore in this area. None of them are near the size of Niagara Falls, but they will be in a more natural setting, so they're not quite so touristy.
So when you get to Burlington, there's going to be a turnoff to keep on the QEW. Make sure you go to downtown Toronto. If you take the wrong one, you're either going to be on the 403 going back to Hamilton, or the 407, which is a toll road, so you really want to pay attention to where you want to be. The 407 will take you to Toronto, but it'll take you further away from downtown Toronto, and you pay for that road.
Although we're suggesting to not take the 407, the toll road from Buffalo to Toronto at this point, there are times that the 407 is beneficial, and we'll get into that now. And that also goes from coming from Michigan. So I've brought up the 407 website here, and you can see if you're driving a light vehicle, if you want to know what a light vehicle is, it'll explain on here. And if you find more details, that's on the website as well. Here just gives an overview of different zones in the 407, so how far it goes. This is really the only toll route that is in Ontario. Below, you're going to get into the pricing for each zone, the time frame, so you can see the comparison of if there's a better time to travel than others. And then the standard fees, if you have a transponder, if you're going to be traveling the 407 a lot, it's worthwhile. They say 3 times or more. I just haven't bothered because I don't travel on the 407 that often. I usually try to take the alternative routes because it does get expensive. And as you'll see here below, I'll show you on the toll calculator later what the actual toll fees are. These are just the billing fees. So there is $1 per trip just for billing. There is an account fee of $3.95. For not having a transponder. There's a camera charge of $4.20 for not having a transponder, and if you have an unrecognizable plate charge, it's $50. So let's just go to the actual tolls, and I can show you what that's like here. So what I've done, I'm going to show both ways. If you were coming the QEW, which would be basically if you came from Buffalo, and if your GPS told you to take the 407 and you did, this is the route that it would take you. So you can choose in here which entrance you want to get on and which one you would get off. So you'd basically be coming up from the QEW, and then it would take you up here, and you'd realize, oh, I want to get over to downtown Toronto, which was over here. So you'd probably get off around the 427. And what that would cost you is, without a transponder, about $36.89 Canadian. Whereas the trip that we're taking right now, we came up here and we just followed the QEW all the way to downtown Toronto. And that's free. So another way you might actually be worthwhile to take this is, let's say you were coming from Michigan, so you were taking the 401, and we can just show you from the 401 where you would get on. So you'd be coming up here, and so in that case you could just take the 401 and go over to Toronto. But like, let's say you're coming from Michigan and you want to go all the way to Montreal, and you want to avoid the rush hour traffic, I would choose the very end. So you're basically going as far over as you possibly can, and you're avoiding all the rush hour traffic on the 401. And just to give you an idea, I would say you probably wouldn't be there till later in the day. So you're looking around $60.11 to avoid all the traffic. But really, that can be beneficial if you are not going on the weekend. It can be really, really hectic driving. And so that's that. If you have any questions, feel free. I'm not an expert on this, but I'll more than happy to help, or maybe someone else who is more familiar with this would reply on your comment, but feel free to ask away on the comments. So if you're coming from Michigan, or even if you just plan to go further north like Ottawa, which is Canada's capital, or if you are heading to Quebec, you'll be traveling the 401. The 401, otherwise known as Highway 401 or Macdonald-Cartier Freeway, extends from Windsor, Ontario to almost Quebec. The speed limit is 100 kilometers an hour for most Canadian 400 series, with a select few at 110. There are also HOV lanes on parts of the 401 as well, so if you're not alone, this can help avoid some traffic. When it comes to speeding tickets, usually driving the speed of traffic will be what most people do, but I wouldn't go over approximately 15 kilometers an hour or higher on highways, or you can risk a ticket. Other highways and roads are all different, so keep an eye on this, and be vigilant when driving in cities, as school areas have very low speed limits, and they're starting to have the cameras that will mail tickets to you. So as we're driving, let's talk about speed limits and road rules. Canada uses the metric system, so for speed limits, everything will be in kilometers. Canada went to the metric system in about 1970, and so some measurements were still commonly used for many years and may still be used. For example, many older Canadians still are very familiar with Fahrenheit, and pounds are still commonly used when discussing someone's weight. But let's get back to the road. If you don't watch in kilometers, you should know that 1 kilometer is roughly 0.62 miles, so when driving 100 kilometers per hour, it will be roughly 62 miles per hour. Also, if you decide to change your Google Maps to use kilometers, just be aware it may throw you off when it tells you to turn in like 200 meters. I had changed mine in miles when I was in the US, and when it told me to turn, that the turn was coming in feet, I just wasn't prepared for it, so I went back to kilometers. So as we head to downtown Toronto, we thought we'd go over safety in Ontario. Canada is considered the safest country in the world for 2024, but having said that, like everywhere, there still can be crime even if it is ranked high in safety. We do suggest if you're driving a nice or newer vehicle that you have a tracker that you have hidden inside, as the crime for stolen vehicles is higher than the other crimes here. There are many great places in Ontario to visit. Obviously, you probably know Niagara Falls, Toronto, Ottawa being the top locations. If you do decide to go to these big cities, there are many places to stay, but hotels can be very expensive, and you may be paying for parking as well. So speaking of money, Canada has its own dollar, and fortunately for Americans, our dollar is worth less. So some of what you may spend will not be that bad with the exchange rate. It's currently quoted at approximately $1.36 Canadian dollars for 1 American dollar. Some other things that may seem high in prices are alcohol and cigarettes, as both have high tax rates on them. So if you smoke or drink, you can check out the duty-free at the borders, but just know your allowances for crossing the border. Okay, so let's talk about how to pay. After 2020, it seems the majority of people use Interac or credit cards, which are usually Visa, MasterCard, and sometimes American Express. I'm not sure the conversion fees for American banks for these, but it is always good to have some cash, as you never know if what smaller stores or markets will only accept cash. If you choose to get cash, just know we don't have $1 or $2 bills. We use coins for these, which are typically referred to as the loonie for the $1 because there's a picture of a loon on it, or called a toonie for the $2 coin. We also don't have pennies, so everything gets rounded up to the nearest nickel. By the way, if you use American coins other than the penny, these are accepted as a Canadian coin, but you won't get any exchange rate on these. They're basically interchangeable. As for our Canadian banknotes, they come in 5 different denominations. There's $5, $10, $20, $50, and $100. Our newer banknotes may feel strange as they are made out of a thin plastic, which is called polymer, and they are supposed to be more durable. They may feel strange, but they are legit. Also, don't accept anything that says Canadian Tire on it because this is only specific to one store and it's not actually money. As for Ontario's tax rate, it's 13%. It's called HST, unless you're buying groceries, and then that's different just depending on the items that you buy. If you are buying alcohol, we have multiple stores to buy these in. It used to just be called the beer store. Yes, that was the name of it, and you'll still see the beer store. Or called the LCBO, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. But now you can also buy this in a variety of stores, just like in the US. As we keep traveling closer to Toronto, let's discuss a few misconceptions and truths about Canada. If you're not that familiar with Canada, here's a really quick overview. Canada is vast, and for this whole country, we only have about 40 million people living here. That's roughly the same size as the state of California. Here we don't have states, but provinces and territories, stretching from coast to coast. It's a nation steeped in rich culture, history, and natural beauty. However, despite its global reputation for politeness, hockey, and breathtaking scenery, misconceptions about Canada and Canadians persist. So let's go over a few. First one, it's all snow and Canadians live in igloos and ride polar bears. While Canada does have a cold climate in many regions, the majority of Canadians reside in modern cities and towns, complete with all the amenities of contemporary life. Yes, winters can be harsh in some parts of Canada, but we've mastered the art of staying warm with central heating, insulated homes, and stylish winter attire. As for Southern Ontario, as you can see here, we are further south than some American states. The next myth is that Canadians say "a" after every sentence. The infamous "a" stereotype has become synonymous with Canadian speech. While it's true that some Canadians use this, it certainly is not that common amongst all of us. Canadian English is as diverse as its population, with regional accents, dialects, and slang. This is a phrase becoming less and less common in the cities, but I think this was made famous many years ago by Canadian SNL team of Bob and Doug. And if you haven't watched them, it's some good old-fashioned humor. The third one, all Canadians love maple syrup and poutine. Maple syrup and poutine undoubtedly hold a special place in Canadian culinary culture. However, not all Canadians are obsessed with these dishes, myself included. I do love maple syrup, but I'm not a huge fan of poutine. Fortunately, Canada's multicultural society has brought a smorgasbord of cuisines from around the world. Fourth one, Canadians are apologetic to a fault. The stereotype of Canadians being excessively apologetic is both endearing and exaggerated. While Canadians do value politeness and courtesy, apologizing from everything under the sun is more of a stereotype than a reality. Canadians, like people everywhere, apologize when they've made a mistake or accidentally bump into someone, but they're not constantly walking around in a perpetual state of contrition. Okay, this one does hold true for me. So that's it for this video. As we arrive closer to Toronto, we will do another video of us driving into and around Toronto and showcasing a few things. So if you enjoy our videos or find anything useful, please like and subscribe as it really helps our channel, and took to you later.